Here we are again, Alaskans. I did a little teaser talking about the governor releasing his budget and that I've thought a lot about that and the action steps that we need to take. And we could actually talk for quite a while about it because it's a pretty in-depth, but I do want to hit on a few high points. And you're always welcome to reach out to me and we can discuss things in more detail. But one of the things we need to do is to make sure what we're spending is done in a responsible way, that we're good stewards of the revenue. We collect about $16 billion in state revenue and about $6 billion or so in federal. And with the budget proposed right now, the governor is proposing taking half of our savings account. Our saving constitutional budget reserve is at about $3 billion. And to close the gap, we are required, unlike the federal government, to actually balance our budget. It would take half the savings. That's not exactly a good thing to be doing, and it wouldn't work year after year. We should actually have about $3 billion set back aside for emergency situations at any one given time. So using the savings is a very temporary plan. So we've got to look at it for the long haul, but so much of it has to making sure our economy grows in a strong way. Our government right now is very bloated compared to our private sector. It is out of balance. Our private sector should be able to afford our public sector, and it can't. Thank goodness we put money aside when oil was flowing years ago and the prices were high. So we are using some of that, but we're not collecting currently what we're pulling up out of the ground right now. We should collect about $4 billion per year, and we have $4 billion less now, right? So there's this gap. And so what the legislature has been doing for 9 years, it's been filling that gap with money from your permanent fund dividends. And the court said they didn't have to follow the formula in the statute. And so that's how they've been filling it. But the truth is, in 2 years, 3 years maybe, we might get lucky and get 4 years, there won't be enough in that fund, the earnings reserve account, to even cover that gap. So we have to take steps now. And as I said earlier in my other clip, I started talking about this, I think it was about 10 years ago, because I knew we were going to reach a point where the production wasn't as high, it wouldn't be as high, and the prices wouldn't be as high. And that intersection would create this gap. And that's exactly where we are right now. And we're getting to the point where we're not going to have the PFD slush fund. So first of all, you have to look at the budget. You have to make sure that you've reined in what you can. Right now, we spend more than double what other states spend. We're a big state. We pay for things other states don't. Other states, for instance, have local police departments in all their towns and cities, and their troopers are only for federal highways. Our troopers are essentially like local police across the state. Yes, we do have some local police departments. So we have expenses that other states don't. So we'll never be the most per capita, the cheapest place, but it is so out of whack right now that we have to start looking seriously. One of the things is we may be the highest, if not the highest, at the end of the year in buying office furniture, of all things. It's that use it or lose it mentality. We are funding empty positions that become a slush fund for the departments. Other states don't do that. Once a position has been vacant for a certain amount of time, it vaporizes, right? And you have to justify it if you want to get it back. There are a number of things like that where we need to take a close look. So my proposal, which has actually had some bipartisan issue and it's had some hearings the last couple of years, I think it is time to really seriously consider it, and I think you all will like it. It's called the Sunset Commission. So there are some blue states and red states that have a Sunset Commission. I'll explain what it is in a minute. And it has worked to save hundreds of millions of dollars over the years. Here's how it would work. The governor would appoint members, the legislature would confirm, and it would be an independent, objective body. It wouldn't be controlled by the governor. It would not be controlled by the legislature. It would go through with a fine-tooth comb every agency. It could only do so many per year. And instead of writing a report, an audit report, that some might read and that would eventually sit on a shelf and collect dust, instead of that, it puts its recommendations in a piece of legislation. And the legislation would be required to go to the legislature. The legislature would have two choices at that point. it could disregard the legislation and not move it. But if it did that, the agency would sunset. In other words, the agency would go away. Maybe there are some small agencies that we set up in the 70s we really don't need anymore. Maybe they would let something sunset. But for the most part, the legislature would want to take up the bill. Now, they can make changes to it. But what's happened in other states where this has happened, the recommendations that the Sunset Commission puts in the bill, 80 to 90% of those are retained by the legislature. So in law, the changes are made, and we have a more efficient and effective government. We have a government that is more responsible to the people. It's a year-long process that the commission takes to review the agencies. There's opportunity for public input, hearings, public hearings. Those auditors have the ability to walk into an office, interview staff, look at files. They have access to all the information. They might see, actually, it could even be that a particular agency is way behind in serving the public because they need 2 more staff. So that could be the recommendation. But more often, they're going to be looking for ways that things could be done more efficiently. Maybe even use of technology, use of artificial intelligence, maybe where there's duplication in 2 different agencies. So you are going to feel more comfortable after that audit is completed and that bill is passed, that that particular agency is a clean, lean machine. So that's one of the first steps. It's very actionable, it's doable, it's happening in other states. We need to do it here in Alaska. What we currently have with the commissioners of the department coming up and justifying their multi-million-dollar budgets with a multi-billion-dollar overall state budget, and we have legislators in Juneau on finance committees trying to make these decisions where it's impossible. They don't have the time or the staff to get into the weeds and really know what's going on. So we truly need a Sunset Commission. This is the time to set it up. So that is pretty long. I'm not sure how many minutes I've taken here just to talk about that aspect, but I'll add another one, and then maybe we'll need to do another a segment. The other thing that we need to do is fix in the Constitution the constitutional spending cap. Our delegates at the State Constitutional Convention in the late 50s, they put a spending cap in there. They were concerned. They knew it could get out of hand. However, as it turned out, that spending cap over time with inflation and the way it's worked, it is not a functional spending cap. It's way, way too high. So we need to go in to fix it. Now, amending the Constitution is very difficult because you have to get 2/3 of the legislators to say yes, that, yes, let's put this on the ballot before the people. And right now, there hasn't been the appetite in the legislature to do that. But I think when you know what's on the line and you know that if we don't start getting our spending being done in a very responsible way, the legislature is going to come to you and they're going to tax you. Already, there's been a number of income tax bills that have been floated, sales tax bills, taxes on this, new taxes, old taxes being expanded. We are at that point, Alaskans, and I think it's going to be time for you to engage and really listen, because Governor Dunleavy is asking the legislature to put together a fiscal plan that will get us off of this Band-Aid approach that we've been using. And guess what? The Band-Aids are running out. Like I said, in a couple of years, there will not be the PFD money that they can pull from. So a Sunset Commission and fixing the spending cap, and I think as you engage and you put pressure on legislators, we could get that spending cap on the ballot. And I'm telling you, the spending cap, I believe there's certain release valves we're going to need. So we need to keep the operating budget of the agencies. We need to allow for inflation, but we need to make sure that that isn't spiking up like it has. And there are charts you can see where those agency spending spiked up. But the one area where I really want a release valve in the constitutional spending, just for all of you that might be thinking like I am, it's the capital budget. The capital budget is for our roads and our bridges and that infrastructure that we as a young state still lack. And what we've been doing the last few years, not only have we gone after PFDs to pay for the operating budget, we have taken from the capital budget to pay for the operating budget, and infrastructure has suffered. So the release valve I believe we need in a constitutional spending cap is stay in line with your operating budget. Once your savings is built up where it should be, any surplus should be available for infrastructure in the capital budget. So that's the one caveat I have with that. But that's kind of on the spending side. That's very important. And I believe there's other things as far as expanding the tax base that we can talk about in a future video. But I want you to know that I don't talk in one-liners. When I say we've got to get our fiscal house in order, that's not just rhetoric. There are actual steps that we can take. And I want you to know that I've thought a lot about it with you in mind, because it would not be fair and it wouldn't be reasonable. The small population that we have could not bear the weight. You can't cut $2 billion from the budget and you cannot put it on Alaskans' back. We have to grow and expand our tax base, and we'll talk about that in a future segment. So thanks for listening, and again, reach out to me if you have any questions.
Paid for by Alaskans for Hughes, P.O. Box 1496, Palmer, Alaska 99645.